You know, sometimes the best way to wrap your head around a huge moment in history is to zoom in, way in, on just one person's life. And today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're piecing together the story of one man, James Charles Yarwood, using the very documents that defined his life. And his journey, wow, it takes us from the delicate, beautiful world of crystal glass all the way to the grit and grime of coal and iron.
Okay, so picture this. This is the world James Yarwood was born into. The Black Country of England, late 19th century. And just look at that skyline. Those aren't mountains, that's pure industry. Those giant brick cones belong to the glassworks, and that smoke, that was a permanent part of the sky. The source material talks about a constant fallout of soot. I mean, the environment was literally colored by the work being done. This was the backdrop to his entire life.
All right, let's dive into the first chapter of James's life. A life that, honestly, seemed like it was already written for him, forged in the heat and the deep-rooted tradition of the glasshouse. And here we have it, the official start to his story, his birth certificate from 1867. But the real key, the detail you've got to see, is his father's job. William Thomas Yarwood was a glassblower. Now think about what that means. James wasn't just born near the industry, he was born into it. His path was basically laid out for him from the moment he was born. And yeah, that path just keeps on going. Fast forward to 1889, he's getting married to Mary Jemima Randall. And right here on his marriage certificate, plain as day, his profession is listed as glassmaker. So at just 21 years old, he's already a skilled craftsman, following right in his dad's footsteps. This piece of paper, it's not just a certificate, it's the promise of a good, stable life.
But, and there's always a but in these stories, isn't there? That promise was incredibly fragile, because behind the skill, behind the new family, was the brutal, unforgiving reality of life for the working class in this industrial powerhouse.
You know, it's funny, the local guidebooks were talking up the area, calling it progressive. But the official health reports, man, they told a completely different story. The air was choked with pollution. Families were crammed into these little terrace houses with really primitive sanitation, like pail closets. I mean, we're talking about buckets, basically. This whole environment was just a perfect breeding ground for horrible diseases like scarlet fever. And the results? Well, they were absolutely devastating.
So take a look at this house, 57 King Street. Looks pretty normal today, right? But for the Yarwood family, this place was the scene of just unbelievable tragedy. It was right here that their little girl, Florence Mary, died of gastritis when she was just 4 years old. And this was after they'd already lost their first son, Joseph William, and only 22 days old.
And the thing is, their heartbreak, as awful as it was just shockingly common. During this time, the infant mortality rate in the area could get as high as 190 deaths for every 1,000 births. Think about that. Nearly 1 out of every 5 children didn't survive. Their personal tragedy was part of a huge, nationwide public health crisis.
So, for James, whose life was already filled with so much loss, things were about to get even worse. One catastrophic event was about to happen that would completely change everything, cutting him off from his family's craft forever. Okay. So the year is 1904, and the glass industry, it's really struggling. There's foreign competition, costs are going up. So to make ends meet, James, this highly skilled glassmaker, has to take on extra work. He's moonlighting as a common laborer, just digging a trench.
And then disaster strikes. A newspaper report from the time tells us exactly what happened. A heavy wall just collapsed. His coworker was killed on the spot. James was pinned, trapped, and crushed between 2 walls. He somehow survived, but he was not going to walk away from this unscathed.
So you have to ask yourself, for a craftsman, what does a crushed body even mean? His whole job depended on physical precision, on long power, on strength, all things that were now totally compromised. For a glassblower, an injury like this, it wasn't just a bump in the road, it was the end of his career, full stop. That accident, right there, was the breaking point. It forced him to completely reinvent himself. The James Yarwood who made glass was gone. Now, he had to forge a new life in a much, much tougher industry. And this image, wow, it just says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you have the world he was born to, the almost artistic world of the Wordsley Glassworks. And on the other, his new reality, the grime, the noise, the heavy labor of the Starbridge Ironworks. I mean, talk about a seismic shift from delicate craft to just grueling, back-breaking work.
Now, this change didn't happen overnight. If you look at the 1911 census, he's still calling himself a glassmaker, maybe out of pride, maybe hope. But by 1916, it's official. He's at the ironworks. And the timing here is everything. The Great War created this massive demand for iron, which meant steady pay, something the glass trade just couldn't promise anymore. But then, of course, the war ends, the boom goes bust, and by 1921, the records show he's out of work.
And this is where he was living when things got tough again, when he was unemployed. Back on King Street. This photo really grounds his story in a real place during a real time of hardship. It just goes to show you, even his new career, it was anything but secure.
Okay, so this brings us to the final chapter of his story, to the official documents that bookend this incredible life of adaptation and really survival.
This was his final home, 34 Hadcroft Road. And it was most likely a council house, part of that new push for better housing, better sanitation. And in a way, it's a little bit of a silver lining. It shows that even while he was struggling personally, the world was slowly changing for the better, moving away from those awful conditions that took his children's lives. And then we have this, the final piece of paper, his death certificate from 1929. He was 61. But look right here at his occupation. It doesn't say glassmaker. It doesn't say glass blower. It says ironmaster's laborer. And that's it. That's the final proof. His transformation was complete. It was permanent.
I mean, this really puts it all into perspective, right? He went from being a skilled glassblower to an iron laborer, from a world of refined artistry to one of grueling manual work. What started as this proud family tradition became a story of just doing whatever it took to survive. His life is like the entire industrial age packed into one person's story, a story of incredible skill, unthinkable tragedy, and just stubborn resilience.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? We've managed to piece together this entire dramatic life story from just a few public records, a birth certificate, a marriage license, a photo of a house. It really leaves you with this one big question. How many other incredible stories of struggle and of resilience are just sitting out there in an archive, waiting for someone to find them?